you meet someone at a party and they ask you, what do you do? How do you answer this question?
You know, it took me so long to actually figure out like my elevator pitch because we do so much. Like if you really stop and think about what an average research administrator's day is like, most of them probably wouldn't even would say everything I planned to do today I didn't do, but I was so busy all day and I still don't know what I did because
Are
there's
you watching me work today by any chance?
no. It's just so much. But what I find, what I have found is the most effective way to communicate this, so people actually understand, because we're such a weird job, and I think when we really start to explain it, people just kind of glaze over because it's like, what? What? So what I say, if somebody was to ask me, like, what does a research administrator do? I would say I am a research finance compliance officer. So I make sure that any money that is received for sponsored research grants, meaning someone else is funding work for biomedical research, I make sure that it is spent the right way and that institutions are compliant with policies.
Love it. All right, awesome. Rashonda, tell me, you're at a party and somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you answer it?
I think that's a loaded question because really for me, I do so many things. It depends on what hat is at the top of my lens right at the moment.
Yep.
It's true. It's true.
So, much like Saira said, when we talk about the minute we say I'm a research administrator, people instantly switch off and go into, you started speaking another language because I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. So I like to tell people, I'm a sorceress, right? I'm a guiding whisperer of research, all things research administration. But in truthfulness, I would always tell people, and I have told people this all the time. I tell people I make sure that scientists stay out of jail. Then that intrigues them to listen first, because now it's like, well, why are they in jail? Why are they going to jail? And then I, go into say, I actually work in research administration. And in research administration, we're responsible for all things that support the efforts of scientific progress.
Love it. And
love it.
True. I love what you just said, because I've heard this so many times, right? Research jail. We make sure that people stay out of research jail, you know?
Yes.
I've used that one for sure. Research jail is sort of, but sometimes I'm like, it also does depend on what I'm thinking about, because I'm like, I'm really involved in community and I do the YouTube thing, and like Rashonda, you're an author and you are on so many boards, and it's my thought is like, what am I going to answer right now? Like, what am I feeling? And then I get caught up in, what am I doing right now?
And that's what I mean. That's why whatever is actually first you might get a little bit of that, and then I'll deviate to, what I should be telling you. Which is my primary responsibilities. You might get a little bit of other duties as assigned.
And that list is
yes.
So, okay, so I'm
curious.
curious.
It's funny because I think this is a nice segue for a minute, if we could, into that job description for research administrators, because what I love about those job descriptions, right, is you see a one sentence. Okay, are you ready? The one sentence: supports investigators in pre-award. That one sentence is like 70% of your job, and it is so much work, and there's so many micro components of that. Like, that one sentence makes it sound like it's a throwaway, like, oh yeah, you're going to assist with pre-award. It's like, that's not really how it works. Pre-award is this huge ship, right? And it's so deadline driven, and we're constantly juggling a million different things. I explained this to somebody in class last night. I said it's kind of like juggling with fireballs. Because it's just, you never know what's going to drop. You're constantly having to look everywhere to see where all of your grants are, where are all your applications, who are the PIs, which one's a clinical trial, which one's a human subjects research but not a clinical trial, which one's animals, right? Who has salary, who doesn't have salary, who's key, who's not key. I mean, there's so many questions, and that's just for one grant. And then you multiply it over however many you're doing in your portfolio. So I think it's really interesting that when people look at a job description for an RA, they see these like one-liners that make it seem like it's, it's easy. But these are huge tasks that take weeks and weeks of work. And I think that RAs are superheroes. I am a superhero.
I think,
and Rashonda's a sorceress. We're getting some really great names here right now.
I know.
I'm
listen, I'm going to say we are definitely superheroes. Depending on the day, you can see the cape a little bit because it might be tattered and torn some days.
True.
But it also, to your point, you said like juggling. You might be juggling knives or chainsaws, depending on the given day.
Oh my God, that is the best ever.
It's so true. Yes. You're right.
So it just really depends. But I want to go into what you mentioned about the job description. I always think about when I got into research administration, how I applied for the wrong job and landed here. Because I thought the job that I applied for was totally something different because of the description. And so I think over the years, as I watched how it has evolved, and I will give myself a little bit of dating and say that was in 1998, but it's still very similar. I think they've actually made it more ambiguous. They put one line so that they can add, and they say that, when those other duties as assigned keep creeping up and creeping up, it says, well, we did say this, and that's actually included in that, and that's included. So it really depends. But I will say, one of the things that I'm actually proud to say is with research administration, it's one of those things you either love it or you hate it. Right? And so when you get into it, you're either going to be like, what did I just get myself into? Or you're going to be like, I kind of like this little life of mine. I like it here.
And I'm teaching a pipeline class, and one of the things I said to my students is what's great about this job that I rarely see in other professions, and maybe it's lack of exposure, but because we're so diversified in terms of the kinds of tasks we're doing every day, our professional portfolio is so broad, and we have so many skills that this job has so much upward mobility in terms of like how you can take the skills you learn as an RA and transfer them and do something similar but different. Gil Tran was talking about this yesterday, and he called it same but different. He said that was something that they say a lot in Vietnam, and I was like, I totally relate to that statement, where it's like you can take those same skills that you have in research admin, but do it in something different, and then you can continue to escalate. We've seen people who started out as junior RAs and have gone on to, run entire departments, huge departments. So I think it's an awesome profession because there is just the sky's the limit. There's so much potential.
Yeah, I actually use this phrase with my mentees, and it's STDU, and it means same stuff, different university.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel that.
Oh my God. I actually said that to someone. I was talking to a mentee. It's interesting because the same conversation where she was describing sort of the part about the job that, was frustrating her was that she felt like there was always, like, she really loved the job, but she always felt like she was behind because of how many things that she had to do and the variety. And, she was wondering, should I look for another job? Is it the location? And I said, the truth of the matter is, this particular aspect of it is going to follow you no matter where you go. The thing that's actually going to change is your ability to know how to deal with it, to manage it, to prioritize, because that is the job. So going back to what you said, Rashonda, either you love it or you hate it. I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Give me the chainsaws, everybody.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
I know.
I'm going to add fire to them today.
Yeah, I'm just feeling a little,
Well, that's actually going to segue nicely actually into the next question, which is I'm curious about. Start with you, Rashonda. Is you and Saira are both consultants, and you deal with a variety of problems that universities and organizations bring to you, and with the skill set that you have, you could do anything. So I'm curious to know, what are the challenges that are brought to you where you're like, oh, I love this challenge, and versus, there's obviously some things that we're just like, oh God, I really just don't want to do that, so we don't take it on. But what things excite you in the variety that we have?
Well, I'll start, if you don't mind, Saira. As a consultant, when I get, I do consultations and I'm meeting with a potential client, and they start to tell me, I really get excited about rebuilds. I don't know why. I really enjoy a good rebuild. And what I mean by that is, it's like we get to level it. Let's start fresh, and I always tell people when we start these projects, don't mention this is how we've always done it, because as soon as you do, I'm going to exit out and it's going to be on the side. That's it. I don't care what it is, how great it might have been. If you mention that, it's automatically out. So if you love it, don't mention it and don't tie it to it because it's going to be out. But I love doing that because with rebuilds, I tie them into building and boosting morale. Because a lot of times in those settings, the employees that are there are just so torn down and defeated and feeling like, we've always done it this way. Nothing's ever going to change. Whereas though you give them that hope and that light to say, well, actually, you know what? We are going to change it, and here's how we're going to change it. Mm-hmm. Because my philosophy, and I tell every client the same thing, is change should not happen to you. It should happen with you. Mm-hmm. And I bring them along the road of change with me. And at whatever capacity and however that looks for them, you're going to be hopping on the bus, and we're all going to go there together. So
I really love, I think that it's interesting because I've had some organizations that they're in like dire straits, and that like like you said, the department's a mess, the infrastructure's a mess and everything. And they really want to keep repairing what is broken. And I think there really is, and in those cases, you often have to wait for it to implode in on itself before they're ready then to say,
to take
okay,
action.
we will make these changes. Have you found that in your experience as well?
Absolutely, and it's hard because one of the things I tell people when I engage with leadership, because leadership is who's responsible, I ask them, how committed is your leader? How committed are they? And then with that, are you committed to really changing? Because clearly what you have isn't working. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to me. Secondly, are you also committed to understanding and taking accountability? Because accountability looks different. It comes in many, many forms. And, you know, trying to move that same car that's broken down is, it's not going to get us anywhere. The analogy I like to use, because I'm full of analogies and metaphors, just so you know, is that, where are you going to play your CD from Blockbuster? Where?
Yeah.
So you have to be committed if you want to be, engaged, or, really moving forward, or forward thinking, or future forward thinking. You really
Yeah.
need to be committed to change. I tell people I'm the person that you want for change because I like change. I'm running to it. I'll go ahead. Let me go ahead and see what's up there. I like that. Let me go see. I don't mind. And I said I might come back with no eyebrows, but I'm going to come back and tell you what the change is going to look like. Um,
And
but
your book, that's what your book talks about too. And it's no
yes,
wonder that you're excited about it,
yes,
because it's all about planting those seeds of change and and
absolutely.
transforming them. I love it. I'm halfway through the book, and then the IDC crisis happened, and everything went to,
Oh yeah,
everything was like, but it's sitting there. I was like, I got to pick this up. Okay.
yes.
So, whoa, Saira just left right before I was about to ask her. She's like, seriously? Now it's,
No, I'm here. My camera just froze for a sec, so I
no,
had to.
it's fine. Okay, so good thing this is recording directly now. Saira, for you, same question is, what excites you? What are the kinds of challenges that you love to get?
Yeah, it's funny. You already know the answer to this question, so.
Yeah, but the audience
I
doesn't.
know, I know. Like you're gonna have no surprises here, right? I also, much like Rashonda, I love change. I'm not afraid of change. I'm not intimidated by it. I think that change is the only consistent in this industry. Actually, there's always something changing, and you have to be adaptable. You have to be ready to pivot. You can't get so married to your own ideas that you let them crush you. You have to always be innovating. You have to always be adaptable. You also have to listen to your people. I think that's another thing, is that, a lot of times decisions are made in a vacuum, and the people that are actually doing the day-to-day work and feel the impact of that work and really understand how long XYZ task actually takes and what are the barriers to success in those tasks. Either it's software, or it's systems, or it's tools, or resources, or training, policies, documentation. They know because they're right in it every day. So it's like involving those stakeholders, having those conversations. I agree with Rashonda. I love that. But for me, I think if I had to pick, I love crisis management. So if you are in a situation where you have a grant that nobody wants to touch because it's just, it's a mess, expenses are posting in the wrong places, you've got a PI whose portfolio is on fire, that is where I shine. That is where I love to go in and figure out what was supposed to happen and make sure that everything ticks and ties down to zero, and that the books reflect the reality. Because sometimes what happens is that in research, you get sucked into pre-award, there's all this stuff going on, you're busy, you fall behind on post-award, and what was supposed to happen was delayed, right? You have grants that have expenses sitting on them that really belonged on the non-competing continuation year, and you got to do cleanup. That's just the reality of our industry. But the further away you get from that, the harder it is for the RA to stay current with what they're doing and also clean up the past, So I love forensic accounting. I love going in there to figure out what went wrong, help the PI and the RA fix it, and then hand a clean portfolio back. That is what I love to do. I can certainly do pre-award and portfolio maintenance, but that is not my happy place. So.
Mine either. Oh my God. I was actually, there's some portfolio that I can't remember. I kind of cleaned it up or whatever. And I was like, this is very clean and everything is working on its own. And the PI was like, everything is so great now. I understand everything. And I was like, my work here is done. Like, I actually need to hand this off because
Yeah.
I need another crisis to look at.
Yes.
Tell us about Purple Harvest.
So Purple Harvest is actually, it's the first of a series of books that will be coming from Purple Sheep, and Purple Harvest was really one of, it's not a bio, because everybody thought I was going to do a bio. It's definitely not a bio, but it is definitely pieces of me intertwined in and throughout the entire book. And really what it is it goes over my journey and my process of how I achieve goals and the road and the evolution, if you will, of Dr. Harris. And I say that because one of the things I learned about myself while writing this book is how much I've grown, right? And when I say how much I've grown, I went back to when I was 18 and I lived on my own for the very first time. And so from 18 to now, I won't say how old I am, but I am fine wine.
Me too.
But
I'm
but I
saying with
will
the
say,
finest.
indeed, indeed. And if you didn't notice, Vanessa, you see I got a little color like you, but it's for my Eagles because we won the Super Bowl. Anyway.
I know. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. But I will say, with Purple Harvest is really a journey, and it's a movement. It's a movement that is collecting others who want to be along the same path of discovery, self-discovery. How do you achieve your goals while there's so many different things going on? When I wrote my book, I reflected, and I started, like I said, at 18, where I was on my own. I was a young mom. I went to school. I worked. I had a career. I had a husband. Yet I was still able to press forward in things that were personal and important to me. And the reason that they were important was because they were, for me, they were part of my identity, but I didn't lose that part. And often we lose ourselves when we become a part of the workforce, and we become adults, and we're out here, and we start trying to live, to survive rather than live. I kept that focus of wanting to live. And that's where I'm happy to say I am on a journey now where I get to live, I get to enjoy life, but I'm still very much planting seeds. My planters list is always full. There are always things on my list, so much so that I get up to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. and I write more things down because that's just how my brain is hardwired. But I say that to say, Purple Harvest is a movement. It is one of those things that as you start to discover who you are and what you want to do, you become more and more, thirsty, if you will, for the next step. And, oh, wow, I completed that. Now I could do this. And this has created a new leaf. And as you discover who you are, you build new branches. And those branches may not bear the fruits or the leaves right away, but eventually they will. And as they start to, grow and sprout, you learn about yourself and you develop new interests. But you just keep moving forward. It is a process of just moving and moving and moving. It's not, a destination of, I've arrived, I've reached my purple harvest. No, your purple harvest is always growing. You're always turning over the soil. You're planting new seeds. You are constantly figuring out new ideas and new parts of yourself that you may not have discovered. And the last thing I'll say, because I know this is a little bit long-winded, is I come from a generation where I'm the end of a Gen X. And I was a latchkey kid, true and true. And so, we were told what we were going to be. We weren't allowed to blossom into the butterflies that we could have been. And so for me, this is also a way to show that I'm getting back into my truest sense of who I was meant to be always, that may have just been forgotten along the way because I conformed to what I was told.
That is so, honestly, so beautiful. And I wish that the book was not on my nightstand so I could share it right now. I'll just put the image right here because, I feel like one of the things that I loved about it was that it operationalizes change when there is systemic oppression keeping you from making, because it's really, you think about it a lot about okay, anyone can say do X, Y, and Z, but everybody is on different spaces and has different circumstances, and so it's very difficult for someone to read a book with somebody who had a great many privileges and say, well, how do I get there? And I feel like you operationalize it down to the nitty gritty to where anyone across it's the spectrum. And I really, and honestly, it has helped me myself to also try to take more time to find more joy and live, because I've really been thinking and marinating on what it is that you wrote specifically in that context. It's fabulous. So yes, buy the book, everyone. It's available on Amazon right now.
Thank you.
And I'll give you a chance to plug that and plug your consulting business after. Saira, What question have you had a chance to think of a question you wish that you were asked, or is there anything that you want to talk about that you want to make sure we get a video of?
Nope. I love what Rashonda said. I'm still like, I just love it. I love it.
Yeah, Cyrus, hold on. Then let me get the book so I can show. Well, I want to show the other book too. Hold on.
Oh, I love
while
that
she's
mirror oracle book you have in the background.
Oh yeah, that is awesome. I will say while she's getting the book, part of what she said that was really important is we all have different entry points, right? We have different entry points to our journeys and to progress. And one of the things I stressed over and over again is to ensure that you enjoy yourself along the way. Take time to smell your flowers that you're harvesting, because we get so excited, oh, I achieved this, now I'm gonna go to the next one, without taking a moment to reflect and just exhale and say, yes, this was wonderful.
Yes, basking in the moment. And I think that I'm guilty of that, definitely, is that I'm just constantly hopping from lily pad to lily pad, and I'm not taking any time. And, Vanessa and I, our mother passed away when she was 52. And so I constantly try to remind myself to, life can't just be work. Life can't,
Yes.
it has to be other things, but it's hard. It is hard to do, because that is not the world we live in. I think the world we live in really is so focused on produce, that in any moment that you're not producing, you feel lazy, or you feel like, you
Selfish.
could be doing more.
You are selfish. Why are you not producing for everybody?
Exactly. So I think it's a tough battle, and I think a lot of people feel that if they stop to enjoy, are they leaving money on the table? Are they not producing, and that somehow mark against them? But I think you're 100% right. It's like you have to stop. You have to, for your own self-care, and really, because why are we here, right? Yeah. Yes, we'd love our work. I can tell just by the way you talk about it. We both, Vanessa too, we're all passionate about this work. We love it. But too much of a good thing is just too much. You know what I mean? So we do have to.
Absolutely. And I will say, you said your mom passed away at 52. My mom did at 62.
Oh.
And a little thing that equally, I don't think no matter what age, even though we're all prepared, we all know it has to happen, you're never actually prepared, and there's no time frame on healing and grieving that loss. But one of the things that I don't share often, but I'll share since we're here and you mentioned it, is that this necklace, the sunshine, actually has my mom's ashes in it.
Oh, wow.
And so I carry it with me, and I travel with it, especially because my mom didn't travel as much, and so I show her the world through me. And this is my nickname is Sunshine, and she's my sunshine, so I keep it with the
I love that.
sunflower.
My mother wanted to be turned into a diamond, but at the time it was just unaffordable. but had we had the money at the time, I kind of wish we still had some. I think Aunt Georgie may have some of her ashes actually, but we could make her into a diamond now.
I know, because I'm thinking, oh my God, talent. Like, this is a really beautiful idea, because like there are people that we love that we want to keep close to us. Because I've often wondered, how do I keep, and this is I think that's beautiful. Not to change the subject, but I just want to show off the book. Hello, congratulations. This is so good. Also, I love the color purple, so it really I can't help with that. And you can buy it on Amazon right now. It's called Purple Harvest, and it's by Dr. Roshanda Harris.
Planting goals and growing truths.
I love it.
Now, as long as we're talking about books, I just was actually going to, Saira, sadly, I'm going to put this book away because I put my tarot cards back there. But Saira and her daughter wrote a children's book, Beastie and Badelina. And what is really interesting about this was that Saira just decided one day she was going to write a children's book with her daughter. And
I love the cover.
I know, isn't it cute?
It is. I love the cover.
And what's interesting is we often say, and this is something like I noticed also, Rashonda, with you, where we often say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And a lot of times we don't do the thing because it's either too big or too scary or too whatever. But Saira, how long did, tell a little bit about just sort of because the journey, the amount of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Roadblocks.
Yeah, the inspiration, I think, for me, so again, going back to my mother, our mother, Vanessa, and I are sisters, obviously, is that my mother's biggest fear when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness was that she would be forgotten, and that she never did anything important with her life, these were her words, and that she felt that she would just be erased and forgotten. And that was her biggest fear, that she would just cease to exist, right? So, of course, Vanessa, me, my brother, we talk about her all the time. She's very involved in our life in terms of like we've kept her story alive, but it wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to live forever somewhere. And so I thought to myself, well, you know what? She was an elementary school librarian. Let's write a children's book, because then I will dedicate the book to her, and her photograph and her story are going to be in libraries forever, right? She will be immortal, because books are immortal, right? In some way or another. So I actually wrote this book. I woke up in the middle of the night, and kind of like what Roshanda was saying, like 3 a.m., I woke up in the middle of the night and I was inspired. And the words just started to come to me. And my first instinct was, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm tired. And I said, Saira, if you don't do this right now, it's gone forever. You will never remember this again. Because you know how it is at night, we don't remember. And so I grabbed my phone, I opened my notes app in my phone, and I wrote this book in my notes app on my phone. So the next day, I go to sleep. The next day I wake up and I read it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually like good. So I thought I'd read it. It would be like, I wrote it when I was, half asleep. It's going to be terrible. So I sent it to my friends and I said, hey, can you look at this? And I sent to Vanessa, can you read this and just tell me like what you think? And they both said, when did you do this? I'm like, I did this last night. So I kept kind of revising it. But I think I was really intimidated. I was really scared about taking this step because I didn't believe in myself. Who was going to illustrate it? How was I going to get it into people's hands? Like all of these different questions came up. And then I just said, you know what? I just have to take the next step, whatever that is, right? I just have to take one step, one more step. And that's actually how I ended up losing 50 pounds. I just added one more step every day. I said, you know what? If I can't do 2 miles day one, I can do a quarter of a mile. And then day two, I'll do a quarter of a mile plus 2 steps. And then the next day plus 2 more. And before I knew it, I was walking 3 miles a day, right? So I said, all right, let me try the same philosophy and just add a step. So I just kept doing one more thing. Find an illustrator, do one more thing, send him my ideas, do one more thing, get his feedback. And I just kind of kept layering one on top of the other. And I think the biggest turning point for me was when I realized I didn't actually care if the book was successful or not. I just wanted my mom on one shelf. That's all I cared about. One shelf, one book, one story. That was all I cared about. So the day the book launched was actually the day the world shut down for COVID. And the publisher that I was working with, we were working on all of these book tour events. Like I was going to go to Barnes and Nobles and like all these different places and do like readings. Like she had kind of had this whole thing set up, and then the whole world shut down. And I was so sad about it because like I was really loved the book and I really wanted to promote it. But I said to myself, again, Saira, remember why you did this. You didn't do this to be famous. You didn't do this to be rich. You did this so mom would be on one shelf in one library. So I took the book to our public library, the Hollis Primary School where we live, and I gave them a copy. And my daughter, to this day, it's been 6 years, I think, or 5 years since COVID, so 5 years since the book came out, she still comes home and says, Mom, every now and then I'll go look to see if someone's checked it out. And she's like, and it's checked out a lot. And so, that to me, I went to the school, I read it to all the kids, and it was just so rewarding. And I thought to myself, this is my mother forever. And that was all I wanted. And so I think that for anyone who is like struggling with taking a big step or doing a big project, seems so scary, don't think about the end goal, right? If marathon runners were constantly thinking about finishing, right, you get so focused on that you just forget to put one foot in front of the other, right? Yep. That's all you have to do. You just have to take the next step. And if you can do that, the steps will keep coming. And before you know it, you've published a book, you've lost 50 pounds, right? You've cleared your skin, like whatever it is that you cared about, but it's all baby steps. You just have to kind of take the first one.
Can I add to that? Because that's such a beautiful, beautiful journey. And I want to commend you, one, for sharing, because it's so personal, but yet so meaningful. And I completely understand, and it resonates with me, because when I wrote Purple Harvest, I actually started writing it when I was doing my doctorate. It became a way to break up the thoughts, because I was so focused on writing my thesis that I was down rabbit holes for days.
Yeah.
It was a way to pull myself out. And before I knew it, I wrote it. And I will even tell you transparently, Purple Harvest is a very small portion of a much bigger book that I've written. And so, it had Purple Harvest in it. And so, like to your point, it's not even about becoming like a bestseller. It is about putting out something that is meaningful and reflective of you.
Yeah.
And I think, in terms of making sure that we, I want to say celebrate those who are no longer with us and making sure that their memory lasts forever. I totally understand because I write also. I've written articles and published them under my mother's pseudonym. Well, my mother's name is my pseudonym. Yes.
No way.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
her name was Loretta June Barksdale, and so I have used her name just so that it appears. And
That's amazing.
I did my first time when I was doing my thesis. I've actually written several chapters in books that are educational books, research books, and that's the pseudonym I use, my mom's name. So I
That's
think
amazing.
it's just so cool to see how our parents really come through, and even though I would say they're both, I'm sure, smiling down on us, is that we have so much respect and want to honor them that we ensure that their presence lives on in some way, shape, or form. So I just thought that was so cool. It really resonated.
And and I think that I love that. And I think what is so great to me is that, if you hear this, like people often say this to me and Vanessa about our mom, because she was very sickly when we were growing up. She wasn't like, if she wasn't a Pollyanna type mom, we didn't have that kind of childhood. But the impact that she had was so profound. And knowing so much more about her story now as adults, right? Like she passed away when Vanessa and I were still, we were adults, but we were still kids. We were like in our early 20s.
I did not finish adolescence till I was like 33, and my mom had been dead for several years by then.
What did we know, right? Nothing. So the more I learned about her as I got older, the more I realized like what a blessing to have someone, whoever that is, a parent, a friend, a colleague, a mentor, it doesn't even matter, but someone in your life who had such an impact that you feel that moved, right, by their presence in your world, that you do what you did, right? You write this book, you write under your mom's pseudonym, you wear her necklace. Vanessa and I, the same thing. So many of the things that we do are wrapped up in this legacy that my mother has left with us. And, the fact that she was our mother, she could have been, somebody else. There's lots of people of influence in our world. It doesn't have to be a parent. It could be anybody. But I think when they leave us, the void is so deep and so endless, but I chose to fill that with power. I'm going to fill this space with doing. I'm not going to fill this space with constantly grieving and constantly feeling that emptiness. Instead, I'm going to say she gave me a gift. She gave me a gift that gives forever, and how can I leverage that to leave some kind of mark on the world, so that it's a little bit better today than it was yesterday, a little bit better 10 years from now than it was when I started. And if that's a book, if it's a quote, if it's a LinkedIn post, if it's a hug to somebody, giving someone 10 minutes of your time, whatever it is, I think that there's so much power in fueling that space with the impact that person has had on your life, And so I hope that if Vanessa says anything you want to share with people, that would be my hope, is that, I think we're in a time right now, someone actually posted this, they said, I'm so tired of the doom scrolling. It's like every scroll, it's like the news is just worse and worse and worse, and I feel worse and worse. And I thought to myself, I'm going to choose not to go there. I'm going to choose to be, as Vanessa and I like to say, the lighthouse. I'm going to look for the good anywhere I can find it, whether that's a conversation with you, whether it's a conversation with Vanessa, whether it's taking my dog for a walk, whether it's making a post on LinkedIn to make people feel hopeful about the future. Because no matter what happens, I believe that it is going to be better, that and it's people who show up every day and use all of those experiences to fuel good, right? That's what's going to change the world. It's not going to be letting yourself become part of the story that drags you down. You have to find a way to find and live the joy, especially in a time where it's not readily available. You have to make it. And I think that's hard, but I think it's so important.
I actually want to say that this is actually a really, I had it ready as Saira was talking, because I was like, if you were in a position, because since we're almost done, and then I want to give Rashonda a chance for final comments.
Yes.
But if you're in a dark space and you're like, I want to be the light, I just don't know how to get there, right? Because that's the challenge that a lot of us, this actually, and this like, I wouldn't say it's a quick read because it's a short read, but there's a lot of marination, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of stuff that happens with it. So I wouldn't even say it's an easy read because of the stuff that you have to go through internally, but that's how you heal, through it. So I would say it is definitely the most straightforward way as I was looking through it, right? Because, like, I don't know how you pack that much in this little book, by the way, just as an FYI. Because, like, it's so hard to read those big, thick books. This tells you sort of, if you are in a dark place and you're not sure how to get to a light place where you can be the lighthouse, you don't have to be the lighthouse right now, but this book will help you do it because it's very accessible. That's the word I'm looking for. It's accessible in that it makes you believe you could do this, right? Like your planter's list, the way that you phrase things, talking about gardens, like it's very, very accessible in terms of I can do this, and I think that's beautiful. So I would love to give you the opportunity for closing remarks, everyone. Closing remarks, Rashonda.
So my closing remarks is that is a, you know, when I read it and I reduced it down because the book was much bigger, you know, and reducing it down, and what I realized is I felt this could be heavy, right? And I felt that this could be triggering, right? This is going to make you reflect, and as you reflect, we always recall things that are unpleasant or may not have been the most, you know, the highlight of our journey, right? And oftentimes when we read things like this, that's the first place we go. So what I did is at the end of the book, there's actually a recap of each chapter and tells you what the point of each chapter was and what the premise was, so that you can say, oh, okay. And what I found and what I've gotten back as feedback so far is people have gone back to specific chapters based off of that. Because of that. And so that's why I added that in the end, because I wanted you to be able to go back and point out certain things. And, you know, as you think about it and you say, well, you know, X or fill in a blank, let me go back and pick this nugget up to say, this is where I want to begin, because our stories all begin at different, you know, stages, at different places. We enter into the chat in different levels, right? And so transparently, as you all were talking about, you know, your mother, and we were reflecting, I didn't grow up with my mom. I actually did not reunite with my mom until I was 18.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
wow.
But her journey and her life was very challenging. And just her story and who she was. My mom, her nickname was Tiny. And she was tiny, but she was so powerful in what was within her. But if you saw her, she was more mild-mannered. If you see her, you see me, I'm everything she wanted to be. And that's why I make sure I ensure that what she gave with me as her firstborn shines through.
I love
You know,
that.
I'm that tiger that roars. I am that one who is unapologetically me and outspoken. And so, you know, my father tells me I am definitely the best of both of them. And, you know, I was planned down to the minute of being conceived, you know, for them. But she was just very, you know, laid back and reserved, and she did for others. And, you know, I wish that I had been able to do more for her in the time that we were, you know, we shared, but we didn't. And I'm still, you know, okay with that. But that's more important why I want to make sure her story lives on, because not only does it bring light to her story, but it brings light to her mother's story, which is also very unique. And one of the things I will say, and I'll cut it off at this, is the best thing that I did is when my mom started to become ill, I sat with her and I asked about our history. I asked about our past. I asked about her mother and her father and their parents. And that is really what just fueled me to, you know, be who I am. Because I will say, you know, if you ever hear Black people say, we are not our ancestors, that is not a dig. That's actually respect, because we are the very best of them. We are everything that they could have thought in the essence of who we came to be. And I tell people that, and even when I mentor people, I go back and I try to tell them, you know, when you think about it, you being conceived was a race, and you won that race. You fertilized that egg. You were meant to be here. You were
made
meant
it.
to be here, right? And so you are magic. You have purpose. You may not have unlocked it, but you have purpose. And when you find that purpose, you don't walk, you run. You run as fast as you can, and you keep going until you decide to slow down. Like you said, Saira, you said, you know, we gotta, you know, slow down. And that's why I say, smell your roses, take a moment to breathe in the flowers, exhale, and enjoy the moments, because we've worked very hard to be where we are and just to be here. Existing is not easy.
It is
There's
not.
so many challenges of
Yeah.
just being your authentic self, no matter who you are or how you identify. And, you know, sadly, society seems to be regressing a bit, but that doesn't mean we have to. It just means that we need to push forward and be more authentic in who we are and welcome others to be themselves.
Exactly, exactly. You know, I love what you said about your book because I have to share this. This is what I do to my books. So the fact that you had done that work for me and put it at the end of it, I really appreciate it. My pocketbook when I'm to buy these flags because this is how I find and I highlight them. You know, so you did a favor to someone like me by putting that at the end.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on this. I just, as why this turned into a great podcast, right? So I think it's like this turned to a fabulous podcast. I was like, dude, this is amazing. So before we wrap up in, let's say, 30 seconds or less, Rashonda, can you tell us what the name of your consulting company is and where people can find you if they want to reach out and learn more about the services that you offer and how to hire you?
Sure, I am Purple Sheep Consulting, and that is SHEEP Consulting. You can reach us at on our webpage, which is www.purplesheepconsulting.com. We are on every single platform possible. We focus on interim staffing solutions, but we also do a lot of customized training and dialogue, empathy, and impact work, which is DEI.
Oh, I love it. Saira, you also, can you share where, if people wanted to work with you and they have crises that need to be managed,
Yes.
where can they find you?
Valley Consulting Group. So the website is valleyconsulting.group, and my focus is really crisis management. So while I can do all sorts of other fun things, and I love research, I consider myself, you know, if you're in a post-award crisis situation, you have grant portfolios that need to be cleaned up,